Any idea? All right. So if there's no idea, let me just start by the background of what tax is. So taxes, according to the constitutions of Kenya, is defined as a mandatory contribution that citizens of a particular state and corporations make to their government. So this contribution is very much mandatory, and there are no direct benefits that come from payment of taxes. For example, if you pay a particular type of tax, you don't see the direct benefit. The type of benefit you see is maybe a road has been constructed, a hospital has been built. Hello, does someone have a question? All right, I'll continue. Yeah, so there is no direct benefit that comes from payment of tax. There is someone who is trying to speak. Okay. Yeah, so there is no direct benefit that comes from payment of taxes, as I've said earlier. And penalties are imposed to those who don't pay taxes. There are penalties that are imposed to instances of tax evasion and tax avoidance. Perhaps you have had cases in court where people have been sued for tax avoidance or tax evasion or non-payment of taxes. In fact, when you don't file your returns, maybe perhaps as students, you need to file your nil returns. And if you don't file your nil returns, there are consequences, there are penalties that are imposed for you not filing your nil returns. And another information about tax is that taxes can be distinguished from prices, because prices are voluntary payment for goods and services, and there's a direct benefit. When I go to a shop to pay for a bread, you see there's a direct benefit I receive, that I receive the bread which I have bought. So there is direct benefit when it comes to prices, and that is the distinction between taxes and prices. In terms of prices, there are no penalties. When you fail to buy that bread, no penalties will be imposed on you, and you will enjoy a direct benefit that comes from payment of taxes. And then just to say that taxes in Kenya are either classified broadly as direct or indirect taxes. An example of direct taxes is the income tax, the one that is deducted from your salary, the income tax, for example, the pay as you earn. And another example of indirect tax are things to do like the value added tax, the excise tax, corporation tax. These are just some few examples of indirect taxes. So that is just a broad overview of the concept of tax. I wanted to start with the background of introduction of tax, because I don't want to assume that all of you are business or economics students. So if there are no questions, I'll go ahead to my next slides just to discuss the relationship between price, taxes, and demand. So according to the World Health Organization Framework Convention for Tobacco Control, which in short it is called WHO FCTC, which Kenya, I think, ratified in 2004 or 7 thereabout. And one of the articles that is included in this framework is the article that deals with price and tax measures to curb tobacco consumption. And actually, price and tax measures has been voted out as the most effective way to curb tobacco consumption in Kenya here and across the globe. So just to mention the two types of taxes that are levied on tobacco, these include the specific excise taxes and the ad valorem excise taxes. I know my colleague John will mention a little bit further about this kind of taxes. So in just a short definition, a specific excise taxes is based on the monetary amount of tax per quantity, either per volume or per weight of the product. We can say, for example, we can charge 1,000 shillings per 20 packs of cigarettes. That is a specific excise tax. we can say 1,000 shillings per 20 packs of cigarettes, or per milliliter for this electronic cigarette. So specific taxes are quantity based. They are not value or price based. They are quantity based. We charge in terms of quantity, either volume, either weight. And for ad valorem taxes, they are levied as a percentage of the value of the tobacco product, such as the price or the retail selling price. For example, we can say that we charge 80% of tax on the price of a 20 pack of cigarettes. For example, we can say 80% of maybe a 20 pack of cigarette costs 4,000 shillings or 200 shillings. We can say 80% of 200 shillings will go to tax. That is what we call ad valorem taxes. So there are these two distinctions: specific exercise taxes and ad valorem taxes. These are type of taxes that are levied on tobacco products. Just to define what is an excise tax. Excise tax are these taxes that are levied on locally manufactured products and sometimes on imported products. That's the definition of an excise tax. So when it comes to tobacco, there is specific excise taxes and ad valorem excise taxes. I hope I'm clear up to that point about the type of taxes that are levied on tobacco. On to my next slide, I will discuss on the relationship between price, tax, and demand. So in economics, we have what we call the law of demand. And in this law, it describes the relationship between the price of the tobacco products and the demand as an inverse relationship. There is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded of goods and services. So just to state what the law of demand states is that all other factors held constant, an increase in price will lead to a corresponding decrease in quantity demanded for a normal good. And tobacco product is classified as a normal good. And what does that imply? That says that when we increase the prices of tobacco, there'll be a decrease in consumption according to the law of demand. So in our next schedule, in our next slide, we shall discuss a little bit about the demand schedule, which indicates the quantity demanded of a good at different price levels. So it's just explaining the law of demand and how demand, prices, and taxes work together. So that is the demand schedule. It is downward sloping to indicate that when prices increase, the quantity demanded decreases. For example, in this graphical representation of a demand curve, we can see when we increase price from 4 shillings to 6 shillings, the quantity demanded decreases from 3,000 to 2,000. So an increase in price from 4 to 6 shillings, you can see by these. So it was 4 and then it moved to 6. So at 4 shillings, the quantity demanded was 3,000 shillings. But when the prices shot up to at 6, the quantity demanded reduced to 2,000. So this is just a graphical explanation of how the law of demand work. When prices increases, the quantity demanded reduces. So this is how we can link it to tobacco. When we increase the prices of tobacco, consequently, the quantity demanded of tobacco will go down. And how do we get prices to increase? We get prices to increase by increasing the tax of these products. Yeah, so up to now, I hope I'm clear. For us to get an increase in price, we have to increase the taxes of tobacco products. That's why the civil society organizations are always pushing for an increase in prices, or in taxes rather, of these products. It's quite unfortunate that in this year finance bill we haven't gotten any increase in tax of tobacco products. So when we increase the tax, the price will consequently shoot up, and as the price increases, the law of demand, we see that quantity demanded will eventually decrease. So that is the relationship between tax, price, and quantity demanded. When we increase taxes, manufacturers will be forced to increase the prices. And when they increase the prices, automatically the quantity demanded will go down. And that we shall achieve the public health benefit that we are advocating for. So what is the linkage between price increase and youth smoking? So according to research across the globe, many researches has been done by civil society organizations, by World Health Organization, and it has been discovered that younger people and people coming from lower middle income countries are more responsive to changes of prices of tobacco products. So they are more responsive. When these prices keep on changing, people who come from lower and middle income countries and younger generation, they are more prone and more responsive to changes in prices of these tobacco products. In fact, the World Health Organization estimates that with an increase of 10% taxes, consumption is likely to reduce between 4 to 8%. Currently in Kenya, just a short finding, according to the Ministry of Health, is that 36% of youths consume tobacco compared to 11% of adults. So if youths make up 70% of our population, that is 70% of 54 million, according to these statistics from the Ministry of Health, is that 36% of these youths, almost more than half, consume tobacco products compared to 11% of adults. And it was found that 3 out of 10 youths use tobacco, with a majority being drawn from university and college students. That's why it is important for us to engage young people so that we can amplify our voices when it comes to tobacco control and advocacy. And when pushing for increase in taxation, your voices are very important because the industry is actively targeting the younger generation. I'll move on to my next slide. So I hope up to now, if there's any question, you can just pop it up. I wanted to share also some bit of information on taxes as a win-win strategy for government and public health. So you may ask yourself, when we increase the excise taxes of tobacco products, prices will go up, yes, and eventually demand will reduce. Then you may wonder, if demand reduces, how then are we generating more revenue and the demand of this product has reduced? For instance, we say we have increased the tax to be levied on bread. The prices of bread will begin to shoot up. And as prices of bread begin to shoot up, demand for bread will reduce. So how comes as demand for bread reduces, we still generate more revenue and the demand has reduced? So we link it to tobacco. We have increased the tax, the price has rose, the demand is coming down, but how comes there is still more revenue to be generated by the government? So that's where the concept of elasticity of demand comes in, what we call price elasticity of demand. I know perhaps business and economic students have heard of this term called price elasticity of demand. And price elasticity of demand just measure the responsiveness of quantity demanded of a product to a change in price, assuming all other factors are held constant. So it just measures how people will respond to changes in prices, how tobacco users will respond to changes in prices, and the quantity demanded, how much will the quantity demanded of these products go down when we change the prices of this product? And elasticity of demand can either be elastic, inelastic, or unit elastic. Elastic to mean that it is more, people are more responsive to changes in price. Inelastic, it means people are less responsive to changes in price. And unit elastic, it means that people are proportionally responsive to changes in price. So mark this: elastic, people are more responsive to changes in price. Inelastic, people are less responsive to changes in price. And unit elastic, it means that people are proportionally responsive to changes in price. And according to research, tobacco products are generally price inelastic. This means that even as much as we raise the taxes of tobacco products, meaning that prices are rising, people are not likely to stop immediately or in large consumption to stop consuming this product. People will reduce, but not at a response that will be much desired. That's why tobacco products are price inelastic. And what causes these people not to respond heavily? It is because of the addictiveness of this product. Tobacco products are so much addictive that no one can just end up quitting immediately despite the increase in prices. So I took an example here of to calculate just how the government win and the public health win when we increase the prices of tobacco. So to calculate total revenue in economics, we take price of that particular good, we multiply by the quantity demanded. So let's say, for instance, we have a tobacco that is costing, it's priced at 4 shillings, and the quantity sold for that particular month perhaps is 1,000. So for us to calculate, the total revenue will be 4 shillings times 1,000 times 1,000, that is quantity demanded. We shall get a total revenue of 4,000 Kenyan shillings. So what if we increase the price by 10% and demand reduces by 6%, perhaps of a tax increase? Maybe the government has increased a tax and prices have shot by 10%, have rose by 10%, and demand has reduced by 6%. So our new price will be 4.4 shillings, and our new quantity demanded will be 940 shillings. From this illustration, when we calculate our new total revenue, we find out that our total revenue, which is 4.4 shillings times 940 shillings, we get Kenya shillings 4,136. When we compare the revenue with the previous illustration, we find out that the revenue has increased by 136 shillings. So this is a win-win for government and for public health. The quantity demanded has reduced to 940, while the price has rose to 4.4 shillings. So the government is generating more revenue, and public health is also winning because the number of people who are consuming tobacco is reducing. So that's where the concept of win-win strategy comes in for government and for public health. And for you to understand how the government wins and public health wins, you must understand the concept of elasticity of demand. And you have said that elasticity of demand measures the responsiveness of changes in price to changes in quantity demanded. So I hope up to that point it's clear. You have understood the concept of elasticity of demand and how it works, and how when we raise prices, when we raise taxes, prices are likely to increase and lead to reduced consumption. So there are also, of course, other factors that should be put into consideration when speaking of demand of our tobacco products. For instance, we should look at the income of consumers. We know when income increases, there is a lot of purchasing power. Yeah. So when there's a lot of purchasing power, people are likely to purchase this product more. And according to World Bank, since 1991 to 2021, economic growth in lower middle income countries has superseded high-income countries. And with economic growth, people are likely to have more disposable income. And with more disposable income, people are likely to consume and purchase more of these products. So we must also keep in check the income levels of people when we are advocating also for tax increase when it comes to tobacco products. Also, just to mention that there are emerging products, the new generation products that are coming up by the industry, and the industry is actively targeting the young people. Right now in Kenya, as my colleague John perhaps will discuss, we are currently reviewing our Tobacco Control Act of 2007 and regulation, and we are looking forward for these emerging tobacco products and new generation products to be included in the tax bracket so that they can be taxed appropriately. One of the countries that I know is taxing these new generation products is South Africa. Since I think 2021, they have managed to include these products in their tax bracket, and they're taxing the liquid nicotine content of this product. So just to conclude, the main aim why we raise taxes of tobacco products is to reduce affordability of these products. And in reducing affordability, consumption consequently reduces, and thus a win-win for both public health and government. So because youth and younger people are more targeted by the tobacco industry, as I said earlier, your voices are very important. Your voices will help us amplify the advocacy that we are pushing towards the policy makers to change taxes, to change policies when it comes to tobacco products. So thank you very much for your active listening. And I'll just finish by saying that young people are not usually useless, but rather they are used less. So it's time for you to
thank you so much.
Step up and be counted among the people who will make the world a better place. So thank you, and back to you, Scad.
All right, thank you so much, Calvin, for that. I really learned quite a lot, and also the ending.
Kenya, your connection is breaking.
That young people are not useless.
Your connection is breaking, Kenya.
Sorry about that. Is it better right now?
Yeah, it's okay.
All right, thank you. I was appreciating Calvin for the nice presentation that he shared with us, especially also the ending where we're seeing that young people are not useless. And it means that we really have a lot of power and authority, especially when it comes to advocacy. And I hope even as you're going through this presentation, you're constantly reflecting on what role would you really play when it comes to tobacco control advocacy as a person. And I know we do have probably several questions which we will get to table out during our Q&A session. Feel free to type them on the chat box. We can see all into them so that we can ask him. And I'm requesting him not to leave until when we're about to finish. And guys, let us appreciate him virtually so that we could show him appreciation for taking his time and joining in and sharing his knowledge with us. All right. Thank you. So we do have a second speaker, and his name is John, whom we also get to share with us more, especially when it comes to tax. And I'm also looking forward to hear your takeaway or your carry away points. Because personally, I didn't know the great relationship between tax and the types of taxations as well. I think I'm learning them more today. And I hope that you are also taking something home with you. So I get to welcome our second speaker who will get to share with us on how tax is a game changer again, especially in the concept of public health. And his name is Domi John. John, hi. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Oh,
Kindly confirm if
you.
my screen is visible on your end.
If you're able to
Okay.
see his screen. Okay, great. So please do feel free and welcome to interact with us again. Please let us pay attention and keep those questions coming so that once we are done with the listening part, we can also get to engage our speakers and our trainers tonight. Thank you, and to you, John.
Okay. Thank you very much. First and foremost, I'd like to appreciate this opportunity to present, and I consider this a discussion, given that we all talk more about tobacco taxation. We talk more about health taxes, and there has been an evolution over time, given that all these products that end up affecting us and drawing much from our pockets in terms of supporting our health systems and many other issues that come with their consumption affect us negatively. So it is always an opportunity it's always a great opportunity for me to discuss and also to learn, because from such discussion you understand how people react to different policy intervention, and also how they think and prefer the way regulations should look like. Again, over and above that, it is always good to interact with youths, because Africa as a whole, youths make up the largest population. So we talk of an average of between 60 to 75%. And given that the industry understands this well and make, in terms from their perspective, make good use of these numbers by ensuring that the products that they introduce to the market target mainly the youths, because the youths are their new markets, or they are their emerging markets. So it's always good to have this opportunity. So I'm Tommy John. I work with the Tax Justice Network Africa. It is a network of civil societies. So currently we have a presence in more than 30 African countries, and we champion for tax justice. So we want to see that the taxes that are collected from Africa is used well within Africa, more so in terms of curbing illicit financial flows, tax abuse, which includes tax evasion and avoidance by multinationals. And probably you've come across, or you've heard that Africa is actually the richest continent. We can actually sustain ourselves as Africans without depending on the developed countries, or without depending on aid from other nations. So we as Tax Justice Network Africa, or TGNA, try as much as we can to advocate for better policies within the taxation space. So for the interest of our today's discussion, I'll be able to touch on a few areas and ultimately conclude with a case example. which is the Kenyan case, which is a Kenyan case example. So probably I'll rush through some of the slides that I already have because Kevin has been able to discuss in depth about several issues, especially with regard to the types of taxes and how they operate. So when we talk about taxation and why we have taxes in place, from our perspective and our stand as TGNA, taxes should serve four key things, which we call the 4 Rs of taxation. So for those who are probably scholars, researchers, and those who are really interested with taxation, we realize that there is a 5th R that is being introduced into the space, although discussions are still ongoing, researches are still ongoing, and probably evolve. The discussions align or the schools of thought argue out and agree, we might be having a 5th R. But for this case, we always say that taxes are meant to serve these 4 Rs. So the first R, which is on the left side of the screen, is representation. And that's where there is a linkage between citizens and policy accountability. The other one is redistribution, which is promoting equity through fiscal transfers. And on the right side of the screen, we have repricing, which is adjusting tax rates to reflect social costs. And lastly, revenue mobilization, that is generating funds for public services. I won't discuss the 2 Rs that are on the left side of the screen, but I'll go by the 2 Rs that are on the right side of the screen, which is repricing and revenue mobilization. So when we talk about health taxes, and specifically tobacco taxation, we tend to incline on the 2 Rs, which is repricing and revenue mobilization. So when you talk about repricing, it means that we push for an increase in taxation so that whatever is collected and whatever is earned by a government or the revenue authority or whichever entity is in charge of collecting revenue will end up affecting the ultimate retail price of a product. So Kevin gave different examples. So for instance, if today you have 6 shillings and mandazi costs you 5 shillings and bread costs you 10 shillings, you will only buy mandazi because that is what you can afford. It is within your budget. When we talk about tax affecting repricing, when a tax is introduced or when tax for mandazi is increased, the price of mandazi will move from 5 shillings to 7 shillings. So automatically you see that the new price of the mandazi has been affected by the tax. And therefore, when we talk about now tobacco and nicotine being harmful products, the tax role here is to reprice the retail rate of these products so that you as a potential consumer will not be able to afford and therefore you will not consume. And for whoever is already consuming will not be able to afford, and the assumption is that they will not consume these products or they will reduce the quantities of which they consume. When you move to the other R of revenue mobilization, we talk of taxation helping to generate funds for public services. And when we talk about public services, in our case and in our advocacy, and probably to you as an upcoming advocate for tobacco control, you should be able to advocate that whatever is being collected, because Kevin has demonstrated very well how taxes can be when we introduce taxes on tobacco, or when we increase taxes on tobacco and other harmful products, we are able to generate more revenue to the government. However, we realize that there is a possibility that the government can channel this revenue to other uses. So probably construction of roads, payment of workers, and so many other things, and still forget that the basic demand of civil societies within this space is that public health should be enhanced. Therefore, when we mobilize this, when these taxes are used to mobilize revenue, we should be able to go ahead and ask the government that when it prepares its budgets, this revenue should go directly to support health budgets or health costs. And so we move to the probably just to have a look at Kenya's current tobacco tax structure. And when we talk about health taxes, we know there are so many other types of taxes. So we have excise taxes, we have VAT, we have turnover taxes, we have import taxes, we have export taxes. But when we focus on tobacco taxation, our key area of interest becomes excise taxes, because it is easier to determine what goods you can charge excise tax. So for instance, currently there are discussions about the finance bill. And when I talk about finance bill, my assumption is that at one point or another, you've been able to hear these discussions. You've been able to hear people mentioning VAT, mentioning excise taxes and all that. So VAT is almost at a fixed rate. So in the Kenyan context, we do have it at 16%, and it is charged across so many goods. So when we want to tax tobacco, because it is a singular product, we use excise taxes because excise tax is easily adjustable. It can be charged at a different rate for different products. Its administration is easier. Its enforcement is easier as compared to VAT. And therefore, in the Kenyan context, tobacco tax structure exists under different levels. So one, it is excisable. And when you talk about excise taxes, there are two levels, there are two types, main types of excise taxes. So ad valorem, which Kevin discussed. Then we have specific taxes, which also he discussed. So tobacco is subject to excise taxes. Tobacco is also subject to other taxes, which includes VAT. And for those who import the tobacco products, because we have BAT manufacturing it locally, we have Mastermind manufacturing it locally, but we have other traders who also import these products from outside the country. We also have BAT exporting them. So that is products that are not consumed locally, and we might not focus on that. So under the Kenya's tax structure, the tobacco products are subject to excise, it's subject to VAT, it is subject to import taxes. However, when we also talk about the tax structure, there is a way or a method in which tobacco products are taxed. We have uniform, we have what we call tired, and we have what we call mixed. So in the current Kenyan context, by principle, and by principle I refer to the finance bill of last year, which had proposed uniform specific taxation of tobacco products, and that is the filtered and unfiltered, the sticks, the tobacco sticks. And later on in December, after the initial bill did not sail through, in December, the Parliament of Kenya considered and approved taxation of tobacco, as you can see, there are two images. The top one, the cigarette with filters and the cigarette without filters, which are also known as plain cigarettes. They are both taxed at the same rate, which is 4,100 per mil and 4,100 per mil for the cigarettes without filters. So this is what we call uniform taxation. So after that consideration, in the Kenyan context, in principle, though it is not written as per the tax laws or as per the Tax Act, but in principle, we have a uniform specific tax regime. So the image down here basically shows how the retail price of a cigarette is arrived at. So we have the production cost, we have the producer profit, we have the wholesale margin, and then another retail margin, then specific tax. So it is the option of the government to prescribe to the revenue authority which regime can be used. So for instance, in the Kenyan case, we are using specific excise tax on these products. Therefore, whatever is collected as tax in the Kenyan context is specific tax plus VAT for the products that are produced locally. However, for those that are imported, you'll find that an additional tax of import revenue or import tax is added to the calculation of that specific price. So what are some of the challenges or opportunities that exist? I know we've been discussing more about mathematical issues, which probably might not make sense, and therefore, as we move forward, you realize that we get into issues that relate with your case on a day-to-day basis. So on the left side, there are two columns here. On the left side, the challenges. On the right side, the opportunities. And I'll start with the challenges and then we end up on the opportunities, which gives us hope as tobacco control advocates. So the first challenge, according to me, is that the Kenya's landscape in terms of tobacco control and also in terms of enforcement of tobacco control laws is that with the with the devolved system of governance, which gives us 48 governments. So we have the national government and we have 47 county governments. The challenge that we face is that even the tobacco control laws themselves is devolved, in that the national government has part of it, which is mainly policy and enforcement of a few of the policies. And then the county governments also have a role to play in terms of enforcement. The challenge comes in that amongst these 47 county governments, there is shortage of funding, there is shortage of technical know-how, there is shortage of understanding, so capacity and personnel. So for instance, if I'm not wrong, out of the 47 county governments, only about one or two, which I'm sure Nairobi is one of them, has a department on tobacco control and has tried to set up laws that can be followed when it comes to tobacco laws enforcement. So you ask yourself, what about the other 45 or 46 county governments? So that demonstrates the challenge. Number two, funding. I know probably you've already come across a petition being run by KETCA in terms of how tobacco control fund should be used and all that. So we have a funding challenge. Since the tobacco control laws were adopted and regulations came into effect, there is a fund that we call Tobacco Control Fund. The Tobacco Control Fund receives some money so I'll refer to the fund as money because it comes in monetary terms from the tobacco industry. So about 2% of their revenue goes to this fund. Then other sources are like from fines and all other sources that are prescribed in the regulation, about 3 sources. However, how these funds are being used, transparency has become a challenge. Ideally, in other jurisdictions, the Tobacco Control Fund is used in a transparent manner, supports sensitization, research, as well as cessation. So another issue also has come up in the Kenyan context. As much as this fund was operationalized in the Kenyan context, I think last year, but towards the end of last year, but one, we've not been able to see as much as we expected. Lastly, which probably should have been the issue number 1, is the challenge on industry interference. Probably in your previous discussions, you heard about Article 5.3 of the WHO FCTC Convention. This one guides on how the government should interact. Yes? This one guides on how the government should be able to interact with the industry in probably policy formulation process or any other issue that might have been raised by the industry regarding their operation in a given jurisdiction. So in the Kenyan context, industry interference has been an elephant in the room, either through bribing, through meeting with the policymakers, probably the parliamentarians, the Ministry of Health, or sometimes even the presidency office. And this has not only happened in the current regime, but also in the previous regimes that the country has had. Having painted that, it does not mean that all is lost. In terms of opportunities, tobacco control advocates in the Kenyan space, we've had a robust team. We've had several awards during the World No Tobacco Day. We have good mentorship. We have enough space. You can advocate. You can stand for what is right. You can come out and actually push for both policy change and policy enforcement. Secondly, we do have progressive laws. By the fact that Kenya enacted, ratified, came up with regulations and all that, or through WHO FCTC, it actually shows the willingness of the environment in which we operate to support tobacco control. Therefore, as an advocate or as a promising future advocate, there is still hope. You can be able to stand and support tobacco control laws. You can champion for increase in tobacco taxes. You can champion for cessation programs. You can champion for smoke-free spaces and all that. Number 3, when we do our calculations, there are already recommended rates when it comes to tax to price ratio, which is about 70% of tax formulating the price of tobacco products. And we are not yet there as a country. We are at a rate of about 33 to 35%. Therefore, there is still room. And the industry, which always pushes a narrative of that already we've taxed the products more. We are not yet there. And the more we tax, the better for our public health spaces. Therefore, you still have room to advocate for increasing taxes. You still have room to advocate for tightening of tobacco control laws and all that, so that you can be able to support healthcare budgets, you can be able to reduce consumption, and also you can be able to reduce induction of new users of tobacco products. So are we just talking in utopia? No. And we've had several success stories in tobacco taxation. And being a member of a Pan-African organization, I like giving success stories from the African continent, from the African context, from our own brothers and sisters, from people that you can be able to relate. So in South Africa, between 1994 and 2004, which is actually a decade, a period of 10 years, they were able to increase the tobacco taxes and decided to use taxes as a tool to reduce consumption of tobacco and nicotine products. And within that period of 10 years, there were two key issues that came out. One, there was reduced consumption, which was a very huge success. Then there was reduced smoking prevalence, which reduced from 32% in 1993 to 24% in 2003. The other issue is that there was increased government revenue. So the government of South Africa was able to collect more. And you can easily note that when it comes to revenue collection, this is something that always works instantly. So you increase the rates today, the laws become effective tomorrow. Immediately on by the time that calendar year ends, or that the government's calendar year ends, then you realize that the revenues have increased. It might take long to identify reduced consumption. It might take long to identify smoking prevalence. But one thing that is always sure is an increased government revenue. The other issue that was also realized after the 10 years is that there was a positive impact on health. That means there was improved public health outcomes. The other case, successful case, is in Ghana. Ghana reviewed their tobacco taxation model, and within a year, there was an increased revenue that was collected. So we are waiting to see, probably after a period of 5 to 10 years, another study, if commissioned, should be able now to check what really happened to consumption, what really happened to smoking prevalence, what really happened to the impact on health. Away from Africa, you might say that, probably this is only working in Africa because we are a third world country and probably we rely so much on other things. The Philippines, which is in Asia, introduced what they call sin tax. And to them, they actually ring-fenced the revenues or the taxes that were being collected from tobacco products. And these went directly to supporting universal health coverage. So as a country, in the Kenyan context, we've been talking about universal health coverage. During Uhuru's regime, 10 years. During Ruto's time, we are now talking about SHIF, SHA, and all that. Why can't we stand and mobilize these resources to go specifically to support health projects? So that we can tell the government, instead of taxing us more, instead of having a levy, instead of having an expensive public insurance cover, which SHA is, why can't you reduce the SHA rates but increase health taxes so that we can have an increased tobacco tax, we can have an increased alcohol tax, and then use that to finance our health budgets. Use that to finance the construction of hospitals, construction of rehabilitation centers, sensitization, and all that. Because in the case of of Philippines, they successfully advocated for increased taxes, and these taxes were specifically used in improving their health coverage. They also went a step ahead and ensured that they monitor, because we have all these interference. If you can remember, in the slides, in the earlier slides, which we discussed about the challenges, and we mentioned about industry interference. In Philippines, the same thing happened. There were attempts from the industry to change laws, and also to ensure that the uniform tax structure for cigarettes under sin tax laws of 2013 in Philippines was not working. They also went ahead and advocated that after they have attained a specific goal, come 2023, there will be an automatic increase of 5% thereafter. So you can just see how these countries were formulating, they were advocating for better policies, they were advocating with a vision of what the industry might probably do. So even as a tobacco control advocate, as a tobacco tax control advocate, you should be able to understand that whenever there is an action, you expect a reaction. But what are these possible reactions from the industry? So our other discussion is on industry myths, and we want to debunk it. So we'll cover one area on illicit trade and on economic harm. And whatever I want to take as a case study is a report that was done by the Tax Justice Network Africa, my organization, investigative desk, and also the University of Bath. Both are based in Europe. So this team of 3 organizations were able to collect information from the Kenya Revenue Authority, from other government agencies, from the British American Tobacco, Kenya, and also from other sources, and went through these, combined this information, analyzed this information, and tried to see, is it true what the tobacco industry is whatever the industry speaks to us, is it true? And after doing all that, the findings of this report will shock you. So probably most of you have already come across this report, but I just want us to discuss it because it is what happened in Kenya. So probably you can be able to relate, or next time when you get any information from the tobacco industry, you will be able to think twice. When they tell you this product is less harmful, you will be able to think twice. When they tell you that we are the best employers, you will be able to think twice about it. When they tell you they are the best taxpayers, you'll think twice about it. When they tell you that they want to offer you more jobs, they want to pay the tobacco farmers better, you'll think about it. So this report actually gives or sheds more light in terms of what the tobacco industry does, including but not limited to tax abuses, that is avoidance and evasion. So the report is Missing Millions, a cross-examination of British American Tobacco Kenya's tax bill. And it's what I want us to take as a case example, discuss it, and then we'll open the floor for question and answers. So the report basically, as I have indicated, analyzed and compared 6 years of annual reports of BAT Kenya with the production data the company supplied to KRA. So probably just to shed some light in terms of how excise taxation works. So you have a company A, and then you have the revenue authority. So the revenue authority in this case is the KRA, and you have company A. So for every product that is excisable, or for every product that pays excise taxes, you have to receive a revenue stamp from KRA so that you pay against that specific product. So if you produce 3 products that are excisable, each of those 3 products will have to pay excise taxes. So you disclose to KRA that I've produced 3 products and this is the revenue. So in this context, what BAT did, they disclosed less products to KRA. That means they paid less taxes. And when you read the report, you realize that actually whatever they disclose to BAT, there is a probability that they disclose to BAT their finished products as raw materials. So they are still work in progress. And therefore, you are not work in progress is not subject to excise tax. That is how they maneuvered and managed to mislead KRA to believe that they produced lesser tobacco sticks or cigarette sticks for that period. So what did this mean? This meant that a discrepancy of 9.6 billion Kenyan shillings for those of us who use Kenyan shillings, and for those who use USD, that is 93 million USD between the period of 2017 and 2018. The company did not provide any explanation to this, which indicates a tax avoidance of 28 million USD in profit tax. So you can imagine what BAT failed to disclose from 9.6 billion or 93 million USD. KRA could not charge them taxes out of the 28 million. The other findings from the report, and when you compute all this, is that you realize that within that specific period, the damage to the Kenyan economy, so that includes costs for healthcare and the lost productivity, because when you consume tobacco and nicotine products, you might end up being sick, you might not attend to work, you might even we lose lives to this. By smoking, totaled to 47 billion, which is around 333 million USD annually, which is 8 times more than BAT Kenya's profit in 2023. So when they tell you that they pay more taxes to the government, you can imagine you receive 8 times less in terms of productivity of the economy. The other issue is that the report also unearthed is that BAT and other tobacco industries came to Africa or have been driven into Africa in search of youthful population. So they view the youthful population of Africa as their markets, which means they are here for economic opportunity. So when they sell their products, when they package their products, when they advertise their products, and the World No Tobacco Day theme for this year actually targets this, that the industry is giving us misleading information in order to attract us to their products. And therefore, as youths within this space, you should be able to understand that the industry is not producing better products for you. The industry is not producing products that you can consume and get less affected, but it is seeing an economic opportunity. It wants you to be addicted. That means it produces products that have high content of nicotine, that can have faster absorption of content, nicotine products, you get hooked, and for life you become their client. Corporate structure. The report also came out clearly and indicated a corporate structure that is complicated, a corporate structure that does not give further information, enough information, either to the Revenue Authority or any other individual who would want to examine them. Remember, BAT Kenya is a listed company. That means its corporate structure should be easy to understand. You should be able to access their information and all that. But this is not the case with BAT Kenya. The other issue that was also identified is that the farmers who are based in different parts of the country get to sign complex contracts. And when it comes to grading of their products, the leaves, the tobacco leaves that have been treated, that have been cured, it becomes very hard for them to tell which grade. It is only the industry that determines. And sometimes they are forced to bribe those who purchase or those who grade these specific products in order to get better products. The last probably finding, which actually to me was more interesting, it is something that probably we have been perceiving as what multinationals do. So the report actually lays out the several other cases in which BAT has been found guilty or still has active cases ongoing with regard to tax evasion, with regard to tax avoidance, or with regard to shady deals when it comes to their transaction. In 2022, the report highlights BAT was found guilty of tax evasion in the Netherlands. In South Africa, the South Africa Revenue Service, SARS, challenged BAT debt financing of 2.1 billion by 2018. In 22-23, Tax Authority and Business Standards in Bangladesh claimed that BAT evaded 220 and 180 million in USD in value-added tax. Almost the same case as what has happened in Kenya. In Egypt, BAT has been in a tax dispute for 150 million USD. So you can see that this is something that the industry has been doing. It is something that the industry, the tobacco industry, has been actively planning. So in the Kenyan case, the reports that were analyzed were for 6 years. So you can imagine what has been happening way before the 6 years and probably what has been happening even after the 6 years. So just to now wind up and open the floor, the information that I've been sharing, if you need more of this information, you can visit TCDI. You can visit WHO website, you can visit NTA. They've been able to do more reports with regard to specifically Kenyan context. You can visit the website of the University of Beth or Investigative Desk or TGNA to get the report that I've just shared with you. So thank you very much. I'd like to hand over back to SCAD so that we can be able to receive questions if there is any, or comments or points of clarification. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so very much, John, for that wonderful presentation. It has been really good and great, especially when you're looking at what BAT has been doing over time, what happens to these taxes, because that could be the major question on what happens to maybe cash gained from the taxation and so on and so forth. I hope that you've been able to learn much more so that when we talk about taxation being very important and useful in advocacy, now we understand where this is coming from. I would request us guys to kindly appreciate him again, virtually, kama kawaida, for him taking time, also sharing his knowledge with us so that we can understand much more better. So let us appreciate him. All right. Great. In the aspect of questions, I think we have several here, and I hope that we are also preparing ourselves to ask more. Let me check them out. We have 2 questions, and one of the questions I'll have to direct it to Kelvin, where Joshua is wondering, where does the tax collected from tobacco products taken, bearing in mind the recent tax abuse, and how is the tax distributed? I hope your question has been answered, Joshua, from John's presentation, where we learned that ideally this money grant should be geared towards healthcare, but unfortunately in Kenyan system, we know how things are. But probably the phase 2 of the question is how the taxes are distributed. I would love to direct that to John. And then to Kelvin, we also have a question on how do we ensure that the tax increase doesn't just shift consumption to cheaper, possibly more harmful illicit tobacco products, especially in a country where majority of the young people, when something is very expensive, there is always a cheaper option, which comes on board with more health risks. So how do we moderate that as a country? Maybe we can begin with John, and then we can get to hear from Kelvin. Thank you.
Thank you. Responding to Joshua. So, Joshua, I will take your question in 2 perspectives. I'll answer your question in 2 perspectives. Perspective 1 being the Kenyan context. Perspective 2 being in an ideal manner, what should be happening. So you've asked, where does the taxes collected from tobacco products taken, bearing in mind the recent tax abuse, and how is the tax distributed? So what happens is that in the Kenyan context, all taxes goes to one basket. So the Revenue Authority, which is the KRA, their responsibility is to collect taxes. After they have collected taxes, it is taken to the central bank, which is the government's bank. And then the treasury picks from that point and redistributes the taxes. That is the Kenyan way and how taxes are collected. Away from the taxes, because now we've just seen that tobacco faces different or is subject to different taxes. So be it VAT, be it excise taxes, be it any other form of tax that is charged on tobacco, all of it goes to one basket together with the other taxes that are collected from sugar, that are collected from fuel, that are collected from manufactured products, be it your t-shirts, be it your jeans, be it cars, anything, be it the payee and all that, they all go to one basket. There is another category of taxes which we call levies. So when the government talks about levy, we talk about fuel levy, we talk about housing levy, we talk about so many other levies. Probably those operating in the environment space can explain to you. We have development levies for tourism development levy and all that. Levies are ring-fenced taxes, and they will serve specific roles. So with whatever you are asking in a recent tax abuse and how is the tax distributed. So I've already tackled how the tax are distributed. Tax abuse, still the same case. If the multinational, the BAT and other players within the space avoid paying taxes, or if the government misuses the taxes, there is nothing much that you can do or I can do other than holding the government accountable to that. So our thought is that whenever we talk about health taxes, whenever we advocate for health taxes, we should be able now to ring fence, because the Revenue Authority is capable to tell you that within this financial year, we've been able to collect this much as taxes from tobacco. So if they tell us we've collected 10 billion from tobacco taxation, then we should go ahead and see that the government directly allocates that 10 billion to the health sector. And even we can go ahead and ask the Ministry of Health to allocate that 10 billion to projects and activities that directly or are directly linked to tobacco control. So that's what me and you are expected to advocate for. So I hope I have answered your question. So they probably, just to highlight something, in the Kenyan context, we also have what we call a Solatium Fund, which is 2% of the turnover of tobacco industry. And by tobacco industry, we talk of both manufacturers and importers. So that one is ring fenced. The 2% is ring fenced. It is collected by Kenya Revenue Authority, but directly allocated to the Ministry of Health. But in my own view, the 2% is not enough. In my view, everything tobacco, other than probably turnover taxes, payees, and all that, for those who work in the tobacco industry, can go to the national government. But whatever is directly charged on tobacco products should go to supporting health budgets. Over to you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for that. I think it has been very insightful in understanding what happens with monies collected from these taxes and where they are geared to, which also shows the role of government also in allocating and disbursing this collection. And we also had a question for Mr. Kelvin, which was, how do we ensure that the tax increase does not just shift our consumption to cheaper, more harmful illicit tobacco products? To you, Kelvin.
So thank you. To answer the question, is that usually that's what's his name? Joshua is asking is what we call the substitution effect. So there's this argument by the tobacco industry that when we increase the prices of manufactured tobacco products, that consumers are likely to shift to other illicit tobacco products. And the products of tobacco that are taxed are usually expensive as compared to those tobacco products that are untaxed. And untaxed tobacco products are those products that have either been imported illegally or they have been manufactured illegally. So they don't go through the tax channels, hence being cheaper because they are not taxed. What Kenya needs to do so that they can curb the influx of these harmful and illicit products, there is a protocol to eliminate illicit trade, which Kenya is a signatory. It proposes a raft of measures that are supposed to be implemented by Kenya to ensure that these products don't get into the country, to ensure that all products pass through the necessary channels and they are appropriately taxed so that they don't become cheaper. And one of the things that the protocol proposes is to form a track and trace system where products are tracked and traced appropriately from the point of importation to the point of sale. And those manufacturers that are manufacturing tobacco products, they are properly licensed to ensure that those products are taxed. We have had instances of cigarettes that they have fake KRA stamps, and these cigarettes you find they are way much cheaper, yet they have been imported to the country through illicit means. So the country, through its border patrols, they need to ensure that there is enough screening at the border post just to ensure that these cheap products don't come into the country, just to tighten their system, to tighten and form long-lasting controls at points of entry to ensure that these cheap, illicit, harmful products don't come into the country. By that, we shall be achieving the overall goal of public health, in that when we increase taxes, the prices of the normal tobacco products will increase and reduce demand. That way, there shall be no substitution effect. People will not move to purchase those other illicit products because they will not be available. So it's more of enforcement of the protocol to eliminate illicit trade by the Kenyan government, by the Kenyan authorities, to have, so that we don't have these products coming into the country, or we don't have these products manufactured illegally here into the country. So it's all about the government and the authorities tightening up their systems to ensure that they implement the protocol that is stipulated in the protocol to eliminate illicit trade. And by that, there shall be minimal to no substitution effect, and thus we shall achieve the overall goal of public health. I hope I have answered your question.
All right, thank you for that. It has been really helpful, especially where we can see the role that the government plays, especially in policies to ensure that you do not have illicit tobacco products. And to John, we have another question where we are wondering, has there been research on what proportion of the revenue from tobacco tax increases is reinvested into public health initiatives? So, I mean, in this particular context, we want to understand if there's any research which has been done, more specifically in the Kenyan context. That is from Fred. And Fred also is wondering, should we advocate for something else like tobacco lay instead of increasing taxes so that we can have the funds channel direct towards health matters? So pass that to John, then we can get to hear from Kelvin for the next two questions. And as John is answering these, guys, maybe we could now be sharing also your feedback. What is it that you've learned? Personally, I've learned about the 4Rs that I never knew about. And I'm also wondering, from today's conversation, what are you taking home with you? Especially when you're looking at taxation being a game changer, what have you learned? We can still continue engaging, and I'll pass it over to John.
Okay. In responding to Fred, in terms of research of the revenue from tobacco tax increases is typically reinvested into public health initiatives or anti-smoking campaigns in the Kenyan context. No, we've not had such a research, which I think should be able to, at least it should be done. The challenge that we actually face is what I discussed earlier while answering the first question, is that in the Kenyan context, all the taxes go to the same basket. Once it is in that basket, then the government reallocates based on budgets that have been approved by parliament, based on votes that the specific ministry departments had requested. So we've not actually had that comparison in terms of what was collected against what was actually allocated to the Ministry of Health and specifically to the campaigns. However, I mentioned that in the Kenyan context, we do have tobacco control fund. which part of the contributions to this fund comes from Solation Fund that is collected from the tobacco industry. So these might not directly reflect on tobacco prices because it is charged on the turnover or the revenue of the specific industries. So there is a 2% on the revenue of tobacco industry that is collected, and it was operationalized last year, if I'm not wrong, 2024, towards the end of 2023. Therefore, we are in a period of monitoring. How is the government using this? How is the Ministry of Health specifically using this fund? Because our laws, the Kenyan laws, the tobacco control regulations prescribe that this fund should be used in financing the Tobacco Control Board's activities, research, and cessation. So it is something that we are, as tobacco control advocates, we should be able to monitor and actually ask the government or ask those who are in charge, has it been used well? So when we talk about tax increases, we can go ahead and now probably also advocate for the same, because it is very easy to know if a tax policy is working or not. So if it's revenue, I've already indicated that within a year or two, you can be able to tell. But when it comes to consumption, you might need some more time to monitor and see its effectiveness. So that can be my feedback to Fred with that on that specific question. I don't know if I can pick the other question from Fred, which is should we therefore advocate for something like tobacco levy instead of increase of taxes to have funds channeled direct towards health matters? So for us to probably in this advocacy, it can be in terms of a guideline. So we already have several declarations, the Abuja Declaration. We have other declarations made in Ethiopia. We have WHO guidelines that come on how we should be able to finance our health sector. So to me, my opinion will be, since we already have a Solation Fund, then what we should be advocating should be in line with our budget making processes, which is both the budget and the finance bill. So when we call for increase in taxes, we should also be monitoring the budget making process such that we tell the government, because we know that with effective enforcement of tobacco taxes, with effective tobacco tax regimes, with effective tobacco tax rate, there will be an increase in revenue, specifically from that sector. So when the government calculates and realizes that there has been an increase in taxes from tobacco sector, because you cannot again ask the government to wholly dedicate the revenue that is earned from the tobacco industry to supporting the health sector. The economists within government and probably other policymakers within government will not sit well with them. So what we'll need to do is just to ask them probably to allocate like 20, 30 or 40% or 50% or 70% of whatever is collected from the tobacco industry, or when we now discuss about health taxes, from all the health tax basket to support the health sector. So I agree with you to this extent that we can ask the government to dedicate a given percentage of health taxes to supporting the health matters or the health sector, but not again to duplicate other levies within that specific sector. Over to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I hope your question, friend, has been answered. And there's someone who joined in. They didn't tell us how their day has been. They have not asked a question. Please share with us what it is that you've learned as we gear to a closer. There's another question from Patrick, not to direct it to Kevin, where Patrick is wondering what proportion of revenue generated from tobacco taxes is allocated toward public health initiatives, such as smoking cessation programs or tobacco related illness treatment, which I think John has alluded to when he was mentioning the aspect that in Kenya the research hasn't been made really. So getting the exact statistics could be a little bit difficult. And Edwin also had a question where he believed that we have a tobacco control fund. Is it working or benefiting from the taxes? I'd love to direct it to Kelvin. And we'd love to hear from one or two of us. If you'd love to probably unmute and say something, kindly do prompt us. And I'm also looking forward to hearing your key takeaway from tonight's session. Back to you, Kelvin.
Thank you. I think John has answered this question as well. Maybe just to reiterate, yeah, we have a tobacco control fund. It was established and it was operationalized, meaning it is working since last year. It has been operationalized and it is working. It is benefiting us from the 2% of revenue that is generated from tobacco industry, not taxes. The taxes for tobacco products are collected by, as all other taxes, they are collected by KRA and they are redistributed by the Ministry of Treasury. But specifically for the Tobacco Solution Fund, in fact, according to the Tobacco Control Act, it is obtained from that 2% solution contribution by the tobacco industry and any other contribution that is made. Maybe there's a country that wants to donate directly to the Ministry of Health for the purpose of tobacco control. That money is deposited to the Tobacco Solution Fund. And also the fines and penalties, according to the Act, they are being collected into the Tobacco Solution Fund. So, Edwin, there is a tobacco control fund that is working and it is benefiting from the 2% of revenue from the tobacco industry and other sources of revenue, including fines, penalties, and just donations and contributions to the fund to aid in tobacco control programs, as John had mentioned, including cessation, research, etc. So it is there, it is working, and what we need to do as advocates is just to monitor the usage and the usage of these funds by the Ministry of Health. So back to you, Scott.
All right, thank you for that. And I hope that the question has been answered, Edwin. And then Raphael mentioned that the session has been great and it has been mind-blowing to him just because he didn't have this much information about tobacco. And I think this cuts across several, especially when you know tobacco, it's just cigars, you know tobacco and its products, but do not know so much information on how the industry works and the role that we play as individuals, the role that the government plays, and so on and so forth. And I hope even as we continue getting this advocacy journey, we're going to discover more things. But knowing that as an individual, you have a responsibility. And as we began, I mentioned that SCAD is made of you and I, advocacy is made of you and I. So each and every one of us has a role to play when it comes to this advocacy. So as we end, let us appreciate the two speakers again for the very good training that we've had, for them making time time to actually be part of our training. It's something that you don't take for granted. And just as a recap, as we wind up, we add John Domi is a police officer, and we had Kevin Asira, who is a finance assistant at National Taxpayers Association. Those have been the two key speakers of our training today. We'll be meeting for the fourth training physically. On Saturday, we'll be able to learn much more details about the VSM. And I'll have to end it at that, unless if we have like a burning question, I really would love to share something with us in 1 minute. Yes, Patrick? Hello, Patrick? Okay, I don't know if we lost him. Do you have someone else who would love to share something?
Okay, thank you. My name is Patrick from Mombasa. My name is Patrick from Mombasa. Hello.
Yes, Patrick, I can
Okay,
hear
my name
you.
is Patrick from Mombasa, and my quick question is ensure that we advocate for the tobacco awareness.
Your question is whether? I didn't get to hear him well. Patrick, could you come again? Your question is whether tobacco. I lost you there, then I got to hear awareness. Suppose you've heard him also, you could briefly text. As we wait for that, do we have someone else who has another question? Or concern or feedback? So guys, thank you so much for making time and being part of this. We're looking forward to attendance is very important. It is what will guarantee your graduation from this program. So let us make a day then. Have a good night, everyone.
Hey, thank you. And thank you for hosting us. Good night.
Thank you for the great session today.
Good night.